So I was going to see if I could do the whole, we're going to, on the one hand, have my face and also have this video with OBS. People said you could do this with OBS and YouTube. I didn't figure it out. Maybe someone can post a step-by-step little manual for me, and we'll figure that out. Usually somebody pops into the chat almost instantly, but we're going to jump into the video here. Ivan the Heathen. What is it? It's been a year since I've seen some content from this guy. It's been like over a year. Exactly. The last video he put out was on the individual in the group, May 3rd, 2018. It's been a year. So we'll see. We'll see if it's better than last time. People tell me if it's frozen. Now I'm paranoid. Now I can never start a stream just authentically being myself and having fun. I was just 30 minutes into it. Okay, well, we've gotten some kind of feedback that things seem to be going good. So let's dive right in. I haven't seen this yet. We'll maybe do a little 2 times the speed or something like that. Let's see what we can do here. So let's jump into it. Okay, we've got some swearing. He's still here on YouTube.
But since I'm still here, I thought I would share with you an idea that I had.
He's wearing an offensive shirt.
And this is an idea that relates to artificial intelligence development machine learning algorithms.
I thought that was Nietzsche in back of him. There's who's that artist who did the? Oh, it's Van Gogh. He's got Van Gogh right behind his head.
The idea that I'm going to discuss is one that when I find it actually seems completely obvious. It seems so clear and obvious.
So he's talking about UBI. I'm just going to talk over him the full time, right?
However, to my genuine surprise, as I have looked around the discussions in this area, I have not been able to find anyone who has proposed anything like what I'm about to propose here.
This is new ideas.
I mean, you know that if something drags me out and makes me sit down and make a video, it's like, goddamn. But
okay, we got some big stuff ahead of us.
And I think it's an interesting way to at least deal with these potential problems. So the line of thought to which I'm responding essentially runs like this. Unlike previous periods in history where there have been fears of mass technological unemployment, we have now reached a time where machines will acquire the capability to do essentially anything with humans. And to do it far better and far more efficiently than humans can manage to do it, with unwavering focus and perfect accuracy and so forth. Where previously machines would be able to easily outcompete humans in physical labor, thus resulting in massive gains in productivity, but also massive layoffs of human workers whose labor was higher. In this case, because even though workers at previous times simply shifted their labor into other industries, it is alleged that at this time, because of artificial intelligence, that no longer possible, because not only will machines be able to perform physical work, they'll also be able to perform intellectual work. I mean, after all, there's no reason why you couldn't program a machine to be able to program other machines. And so even skilled technical work like computer programming could essentially be just handed off to machines to do.
Right.
So instead, because of this threat, possibility exists that potentially every human person currently working, or nearly every human person, will be unemployed by machines, will not be able to compete with the enormous productivity of these companies. And so we'll have this enormous army of the unemployed who are not earning wages, who are not being paid, who are not able to secure shelter or sustenance for themselves. And this will cause an enormous amount of social chaos.
Okay.
Face something like this, for instance, people might riot, they might fall into despair, any number of terrible things.
Rioting and despair. Yeah, social chaos. I mean, I don't know about that. I feel like if watching at 4 times speed, yeah, boss. Imagine the people not watching the live stream. Imagine the people rewatching the stream, doing 2 times on my stream. The name of Ivan's channel is Ivan the Heathen. So this the title of his video is "Even After the Singularity, We Still Won't Need UBI." So he's a libertarian. He's going to make some libertarian economics arguments. That's my guess. But the idea that without jobs, there's going to be social chaos. I mean, probably there's going to be some despair, but social chaos, I don't know. It seems like the social chaos happens when everybody is employed. It seems like the social chaos happens when everybody is like economically viable and vigorous and working and things are happening, things are going on. That seems to be the big old powder keg traditionally. When people are, I mean, I guess you can make the argument that like when people are unemployed, when people are bored, I guess this is like the Great Depression argument, like everyone was unemployed. So then the state was like, let's go to war to fix this unemployment crisis. I don't think he looks like Styx Hexenhammer. I don't think he has the right angular dolichocephaly. We're really getting into skull shapes here, but he seems to be more brachiocephalic to me. just in general. Styx is more angular. He is more, if you think about all of the structures of everything, I would, have to do a side-by-side comparison, but I don't think that's accurate. I mean, I guess he wears glasses and has facial hair, they both probably look the same to that extent. All white people look the same to me. So let's needing work like a child needs its mother, the state of man. Yeah, the needing work thing. Yeah, that is true. People do need work. They do need direction. They need to be directed. Some people don't. Some people are creative. Some people you leave them alone and they just go to town all by themselves. But a lot of people, they really do need direction. They really do need someone to hold their hand. Who has the greatest skull of all? Well, I mean, just who is beautiful? Like, ask yourself, who's the most beautiful person? And the answer to that question would be the most beautiful person is like who wins the beauty contest, right? Who wins the popularity contest? So who's the most popular person? Single person, not T-Series. T-Series is a conglomerate of many different Indian artists. But who's the singular most popular person on YouTube? It's not Skeletor. It's actually PewDiePie. So this is just like some empirical quantitative analysis. We're just saying who's the most subscribed. It just happens to be PewDiePie. Now, we could go down that list of people who are the most subscribed, and we could analyze them, and we could try to like draw some conclusions. So this is maybe anecdotal. I'm not doing a thorough analysis of the top 10 or top 100. I mean, we could do that kind of really autistic video where we just go through all these different people and we like measure their faces and their structure. And people do this, and people talk about the golden ratio and the golden rule with respect to facial structure. But you've got PewDiePie, and you just look at him, and he is very I'm losing the word here. I was just pronouncing it. Dolichocephalic. It's a hard word. That's why we use it. We like hard words. So dolichocephalic, PewDiePie, they just go together. I mean, these are good things. Let's see. Keith Woods, no, don't really watch him. Body language similar to Nick. I don't see the similarity, especially because Nick sits down. I'm not a big fan of sitting. I'm not much of a sitter. So I don't really sit down, and I don't know. I don't see the mannerisms. His camera is angled in such a way as you can always see his hands at all times. He's always using his hands like, the typical Italian, I guess, is the stereotype he's working with. I mean, I guess I have hand movements, but I think they're more John David Ebert sort of, conceptual. Like when I get into the hand movements, they're like some weird illustrative, like in a sense, my hand movements, I feel, are a little more, they're a little more like representative. Like I'm like doing some of these things. Like I just see him as like, gabagool, he's just doing that. He embraces that. That's his thing. So that's what he does. And also you have Trump, Trump, he's pointing at the camera. He's pointing at people. I feel like maybe it's Trump in general just has promoted the use of hand movements. He's been an evangelist for hand movements. Maybe that's seeped into my consciousness. Maybe we're all children of the Trumpian hand gestures. We are children of our time. So obviously I did not invent the hand gesture. Obviously I've learned this behavior from other people. So that's just the way it is. When I search Ivan, this stream shows up near the top. Not so when I go incognito. Yeah, that's probably because you're subscribed. And therefore, the way the YouTube search algorithm works is dependent upon your subscriber status. As far as I know, if you search, you can search terms that pop up my videos, but it's not easy. Like there's different levels to it. The algorithm is a very complex thing. It has a lot of different weightings to it. So let's pop back into this video continue on.
It is proposed that in order to avert this disaster, it is necessary for the government to give out a universal basic income to all humans.
It's going to make a libertarian argument.
By machine, it is necessary that they have at least a certain minimum of income and that they're able to use this to secure a living for themselves. Also, since enormous gains in productivity will result from the increased use of artificial intelligence in industry, it's very easy to tax away money from these enormously wealthy companies to supply the UBI. And so the idea goes, it will basically work out. It will be a workable and sustainable system. And in fact, it will be the only such system under this scenario because humans just won't be employed anymore. At least not likely. Now, what I'm about to propose, what I'm about to discuss, will show that.
Okay, so are you going to tell me that if humans are forced out of the workforce by robots, we could give all the humans UBI from the profits from the corporations so that they can buy more widgets made by robots? Are you going to say that this would actually represent a point in history where humans are obsolete and therefore we don't need UBI? Therefore, we don't need to pay people $1,000 a month because what's the point? The point, theoretically, the point of UBI right now is it is a form of welfare that is a direct form of welfare rather than, see, Michael Bloomberg has this idea of we should tax the poor people and we should then provide free healthcare, free food, free housing. And so this is a form of welfare. This is a form of free stuff, but it is free stuff that the government has decided you get this free stuff rather than other kinds of free stuff. You don't have cash because if you give people cash, they can buy drugs, they can buy prostitutes, they can go to musical concerts, they can spend it on entertainment, they can gamble it away, they can buy alcohol. I mean, the list goes on and on. When you give poor people cash, Bloomberg is making this argument, which is, there is some merit to the argument. It's not really a popular argument, but if you just give people cash and you give the poorest people cash and, there's sort of some core, they didn't just randomly end up poor. There's a series of, environmental factors that led to that and so on and so forth. They developed certain habits. You see this, people go to Los Angeles and they'll interview the homeless. There's a huge homeless population. They're very friendly. They'll talk to you. You can ask them, if you got $1,000, what would you do with it? And they'll say, I'd go on a party. I'd buy a bunch of alcohol, a bunch of drugs. Me and my friends, we'd rent a hotel. We'd have a party. You wouldn't invest it. You wouldn't buy a suit or, make a down payment on a car or try to stop being homeless or try to get a job or something. You wouldn't try to get technical skills. You wouldn't enroll in courses. You wouldn't try to get yourself out of the situation. You'd just spend it on a party and then waste the money, and then you go back to being homeless. And they're like, yeah, that's what we do. And that's just their way of living. And that is the boom and bust cycle of poor people. And so Bloomberg is making this argument of we have to address the problem of poverty, but we can't do it by just giving them money. We have to create government programs to give them free stuff that they need that will help them get out of poverty rather than just giving them cash. And so, love them or hate them, I feel like there are some straight facts somewhere in what Bloomberg is saying. And then that is the purpose of UBI ultimately is rejecting Bloomberg's argument and saying, actually, the consumer knows better how to spend their money than the government. So UBI in a way is a libertarian thing where UBI is saying, look, we shouldn't have massive government housing, massive government food stamps, massive government childcare, massive government college, massive government public school, all of the things that the government spends tax money on and inflation dollars, Federal Reserve dollars on. Rather than build up these institutions, which are always biased and always problematic and always have ideological biases in them, and that can be used to basically punish people who are enemies of the state. Instead of doing that, let's just give everyone a blanket $1,000 and they can figure out what to do. They can pay their rent, or they can live in a RV, or they can invest in the stock market, but they're going to spend it in ways that are much more stimulating to the economy than government programs. So these are basically the two arguments in opposition to each other. But UBI necessarily exists within the context that some people are doing well and some people are poor. If you have the idea that everybody is put out of a job, not just some people put out of a job by manufacturing, not just blue collar workers, but everyone is put out of a job, and maybe only 1% of people actually supervise the robots, everybody else is unemployed, then UBI, of course, doesn't make sense anymore. If you reach that point, of course, people are just obsolete. And at that point, it's a depopulation program. I mean, why bother having, if these people can't perform meaningful work, why bother having them around? Why not just keep around? Because that is the vast majority of human history. People are engaged in resource acquisition from the tribal, Paleolithic, hunter-gatherer. You know, you've got women are having kids to perpetuate the system. You've got men are hunting. You've got people making clothes. You've got people doing these very basic tasks that are related to survival. And yes, there's a social aspect, maybe a religious, spiritual aspect. But this is early human society, and up through agriculture, everyone switches over to being farmers, working the land. And people are necessary, right? We don't get to this point where people are unnecessary until the Industrial Revolution starts to bring into question the slave trade. It's like, why do we need all these slaves doing manual labor if we have these cotton looms and it's so much more productive? Why do we need all these slaves? It doesn't really make sense. It's this surplus labor. And so the basically the destruction of the economic incentives for slavery allow the moral arguments to be heard, because before they would be suppressed by moneyed interests. But once those economic interests subside or become less powerful, that allows these moralistic arguments to come to the fore. And, you know, it's the same thing with natalism. Throughout history, natalism has always been a necessity. We need to have kids, more and more kids. The more kids you have, the bigger the population, the more wealth you have, the more workers you have, the more land you can farm, the more workers in the factories, whatever. When you get to a point where robots can do every job better than human beings, then there's no point to natalism, and therefore moral arguments for antinatalism, whether they're based in environmentalism, whether they're based in whatever, arguments about suffering, a Buddhist spirituality, sexuality, alternative lifestyles, transgenderism, whatever. All of these things that kind of orbit around antinatalism at the center, they can come from many different places, sort of like a spider web with a center to it. But you know, that morality is going to rise as the economic incentives for natalism continue to decline. In the past, if someone was shouting antinatalist stuff, which the Cathars did in Europe, and the Bogomil sects and the Old Believers in Russia, people who castrate themselves, Quakers, Shakers, not Quakers, but Shakers, two different, very similar name, two different groups. But anyway, these antinatalists have always been suppressed and always been seen dangerous by the money powers, who recognize that natalism is necessary to grow the economy, grow the GDP. Right now, we have this thing with immigrants, where immigration is the big GDP grower. It's the big natalist idea. But you know, if what Ivan's saying comes true, then we're going to head toward that. All right. So as I was talking, a bunch of stuff happened in the chat. Made a typo. Time to whip myself. Very medieval. And practice, a thick skull means you are less likely to get knocked out in a fight for your life or a woman, but a thin skull makes more room for brains. Pros and cons, I guess. Yeah. Basically, it's neoteny or neotony, however people want to pronounce it. And then you have what is considered a more archaic skull. So if you have a sloped skull and someone punches you, what happens is, it's in the same way that a car is shaped so that, you know, you see the wind turbines, or like the cars in the wind tunnel, not a turbine, but a tunnel. And the wind kind of goes up over the car and the smooth surface of the car, and it creates an aerodynamic. Same thing with planes. The wind hits the plane and it smoothly travels over the smooth contours of the plane. If someone punches you in the skull and your skull is sort of angled at like a 45-degree angle or something, that punch is going to tend to travel up, and the force is going to be distributed across the surface of the skull. Whereas if you have a big flat skull, this forward-facing skull, as you see in like Greek sculpture, then that punch is going to hit you in the forehead, and all that force is just going to, all of a sudden, like the impact, the impulse, force over time distribution is going to be greater, more concentrated. So, you know, chimpanzees, for that reason, you look at chimpanzees, they have a very sloped skull. And that's protective of the brain. And that's good. If you're talking about a fight, it's probably good to have a sloped skull. By having your brain out in front and flat and forward, that's probably going to, make your brain more vulnerable. So if we're talking purely about making people good at fighting fist fights and things like that, then dolichocephaly and neoteny in general is not necessarily the best idea. You don't necessarily, if it's an MMA fight and it's PewDiePie versus the chimpanzee, sorry, Pewds, my money is on the chimpanzee. I apologize. I guess that makes people sad, but there's something to that. So there's pros and cons to every kind of specialization. Morphological specializations in biology do lead to pros and cons. Let's see, Gabagool. Yeah, we do talk about the Gabagool. PewDiePie's thumbnail has replaced his index finger with his ring finger. Not sure about that. It surely is something worth investigating. When I make a typo in this chat, I feel ashamed to be alive. Yeah, true. Poor people spend free cash on lottery. I wish that was a lie, but unfortunately not. Phrasing UBI this way makes it sound like a pyramid scheme. Yeah, the economy is a pyramid scheme, dude. Everything's a pyramid scheme. But further rumination leads one to believe money itself has been a pyramid scheme. True. Chris Bond has a very interesting, he has a book called Nemesis, and he's doing a lot of research, and he has a lot to say about, and he's very interested in this topic where I think we need to do more investigation. The concept that money itself has a centralizing effect. That is, when you do not have currency, let's say it's just barter and trade and sharing and basically tribal communism. In such a situation, let's say I have like a little tribe or a plot of land or whatever. I'm growing the food. I feed my family. My family gets strong. We have kids. We have an extended family. We have a tribal grouping, whatever. We can imagine this local little community has an economy within itself. It has a means of extracting resources from its environment, consuming those resources, turning those resources into energy, investing in the future, reproducing, so on and so forth. So we understand this model local economy. And we can understand that these economies then spread out over the earth in a rhizomatic fashion. And we can then imagine that there is this king or warrior band or whoever. There's some kind of central power, which is not rooted to the land. Maybe it's nomadic. Maybe it's the Mongols or somebody. But they're running around and they're basically like the mafia. They're extracting taxes. So they come into town one day with their horses, with their spears. They're very powerful guys. I mean, they specialize in the art of violence, and this community, which is really based around growing itself, growing crops, reproducing, maybe has cultural artifacts, they have pottery or whatever they're doing, but they're not really specialized in military matters. So this nomadic warrior band can come in like the mafia, like the Sicilian mafia, and say, look, you basically need to give us some grain, you need to give us some of your pottery, jewelry, whatever. You need to give us some resources, some wealth, because otherwise we're going to hit you hard. It's basically protection payment. So you can say this is like early state formation theory. Now, Ryan Falk used to talk about state formation theory and said that essentially religion was necessary and primary, that you had to have religion before you could have the formation of early states. And I think there is definitely truth to that. As opposed to this warlord theory. But when you're thinking about this, it's very difficult for these nomads to go through this process or to automate this process. The warlord situation I'm describing, ignoring the criticism that this is not actually accurate, that perhaps early state formation was more religious in nature. I think that's legitimate. But let's just run with the thought experiment. It's very difficult for this process to automate. You have to continually reinforce the message, to continually go back to communities and say, give me your crops, give me your grain, give me your wealth, give me your cows, whatever it is that they're extracting as a tax. You have to go again and again and again. And this warlord model actually extends into medieval Europe, the Holy Roman Empire. The emperor did not just sit in the capital city of Berlin and let the wealth flow in, and basically the tax collectors would go around the country and go back to Berlin. It's not what happened. Even the medieval system of taxation was very different at that time from the present day. But essentially what had to happen was the emperor had to travel around to different, quote unquote, imperial cities, and he would stay in different imperial cities. And he would also stay in the manors and the castles of different local lords and fiefdoms and aristocrats. And they would be invited in. There was a whole ritual. There was an exchange of gifts. So it's very ceremonial, it's very religious. But there was this concept that the emperor, the king, the central power, he would be running around the country at all times, all around the year. He was not stationary. And this reflects his heritage of these nomadic warriors that would go around the countryside, pillaging or asking nicely and basically using carrot and stick to try to extract resources as a means of a survival strategy rather than being sedentary, farmers. So these nomads going around, this form of taxation is preserved through the Holy Roman Empire. Now, when you have religion and you have urbanism, what we see on these coins is we see heads, we see icons, we see idols of kings and emperors who are deified. And so the idea that religion and coinage and currency all are sort of the same thing makes a lot of sense. I mean, jewelry as a fetish item, gold, being a bit, being again, what did we find? We find in the Myers-Briggs, I was talking about this, the judging aspect versus the perceiving aspect. Give me the old Wikipedia, babe. Hey, Wikipedia, tell me what's up here. So I think is it judging versus perceiving? No. I think it's sensing versus intuition. So an intuitive person sees the big picture, sort of religious thinking, enjoys ideas and concepts for their own sake, figurative, poetic thinking. The sense person focuses on concrete facts and details, practical applications. So putting these two personality types in opposition to each other, a sensory person, someone who's very sensing, they look at gold and they're like, what's the point of this? It's a rock. It's a shiny rock. Yeah, it's pretty, but who cares? What can I do with it? I want an iron sword. I want a steel armor. I want a horse. I want practical technology, machinery. What is all this jewelry and gold and all these pretty things? What does that matter? So we can understand that precious metals like gold, like silver, like jewelry, all of this has to do with the concept of religion in a very deep way. And so the fact that early coinage was often gold or bronze or silver is something valuable. I mean, I guess the Spartans had like these giant iron bars or something, as like they wouldn't mint coins. They had like these, I've heard of this before, that the Spartans had these big, really heavy items of currency so that you couldn't steal them very easily. So you'd need, they didn't have trucks back then. So you'd need to have like dozens of horses to like steal someone's wealth. So it would, having a bank heist would be pretty difficult. But basically, a lot of the concept of wealth, like the idea that this piece of gold is worth a cow, to a sensory person, to someone who just is looking at the literal value, it's like, well, I can eat a cow, I can milk a cow, or a horse, I can ride a horse. It makes me go faster. I can use it in warfare. Weaponry, a sword, I can use a sword. Even I can take iron, I can take steel, I can make a sword. But gold, there's no use. Now, there's modern uses for gold today in electronic components, but back then there was no use for gold. So the fact that people were able to use gold as coinage and jewels, little jewels, again, today you might find like diamond actually has a practical function in diamond cutting. Diamond, because of its molecular structure, you can use it to make very precise cuts and, for industrial purposes or aesthetic purposes. But at that time, there's no use to diamonds. There's no use to onyx or opal or topaz or sapphire or emerald. You see this in China. They're a big fan of the emeralds. So gold and jewelry, it's completely useless. The fact that at any time that they were able to develop a sense of currency, that this has value, that has to do with the intuitive function. That has to do with the idea of figurative, poetic thinking, ideas and concepts, big pictures, possibilities, looking at the gold as a possibility, as a potentiality, as a stand-in for wealth, as a symbol for wealth. So in a sense, you are adding value to this thing which does not have intrinsic biological value. It becomes a marker for wealth. So that whole process is deeply related to religion. And religion is deeply related to the way that the state centralizes itself, the way that you get all of these people to agree that this is what's moral, this is what's not. Here is who is the king, here is who is not the king. This is how we define the social strata. Here's how we define the rituals of society. It's really necessary in order to urbanize a population, to get everybody together, to get everyone to cooperate. You need currency, you need religion. All of these concepts are really simultaneous and codependent in a way. They feed into one another. So the idea that religion is a pyramid scheme, religion is a scam, the state is a pyramid scheme, the state is a scam, money is a pyramid scheme, money is a scam. You hear these things from libertarians who are very sensory. Libertarians focus on the reality of how things are. Libertarians pay attention to concrete facts and details. Libertarians prefer ideas that have practical applications, and libertarians like to describe things in a specific literal way. That's why the state, religion, money, these things don't make sense to libertarians and atheists and skeptics and these sensing people. They don't understand it. It's all a bunch of nonsense to them. Whereas an intuitive person sees religion and sees jewelry and art and the state and all of these things as something which is legitimate. So I think there's something deep here that, I mean, before we've talked about schizophrenia and autism, but I guess there's some pushback. People don't like me pathologizing the human species. Everyone fits into one of these two categories. That's not really what I was trying to do. I was trying to give it some pizzazz, generate interest in a way. But that's another, we can go to the Myers-Briggs if you want a more cold business analytic. I mean, Myers-Briggs is just Carl Jung, sterilized, right? So maybe Carl Jung has a better vocabulary. Maybe we'll have to read some Carl Jung someday. Carl Jung seems like the Jordan Peterson of his day. He's like, let's not do anything. Let's just clean our rooms. And he seems like a very, again, I guess I speak against the eroticization of politics and things like that. But I don't know. I'm having this debate with Obelisk Respecter, who has many different usernames, but his original one, as far as I know, is Obelisk Respecter. And he's making all these arguments like, well, the elites think this way, and if you debase yourself and humiliate yourself before the elites, maybe they'll like you, maybe they'll respect you, maybe they'll throw you some breadcrumbs. And it's like, so what? If I wanted to do that, I would just be a neoconservative, right? If I wanted to do that, I would just go to DC. I would have taken the trip to DC. That's the real trip. Taking the trip to DC, that's the first trip. Maybe there's some other trips later, but first you take the trip to DC and you copy the talking points and you become a Charlie Kirk guy, and you can make a lot of money really quickly if that's what you want to do. If you're interested in politics and you're interested in subjugating yourself before elites, then you can make the trip to DC and you can figure out, okay, what's in demand, where's the money, follow the money, just say whatever is necessary. That path exists for people. It doesn't seem like it's actually a driver of history, though. Just doing what the elites say, well, that you're just sort of reproducing and replicating their interests and their ideology. You're not actually becoming a part of them. You're not creating anything yourself. You're not actually directing society. You're the middle management of society. So it seems to be a non-starter for me. I mean, if you want to do that, maybe you should stop arguing with me on YouTube. Maybe you should just go to DC. But I don't know, maybe you have a personal reason, like your forehead is too big and your gums, I don't know, maybe. But I don't know. I think there are some people in DC who are, I don't think there's a beauty contest that prevents you from going into DC. So I don't know, man. If you think that's what you want to do, then I can't stop you. But I guess this high-low versus the middle thing, it's like, elites do drive history, and what is an elite, and is this like a tautology? Elites drive history, therefore I guess that means we can never change anything, because necessarily whoever is not in power is not elite. If you equate the word elite with the term in power, then it's a tautology that means that nothing can ever change. Of course, that's not true. And I think technology is the way, and creating new technology is the way that we create change. So Christianity is a technology, God is a technology, religion is technology, literacy, writing is technology, art is technology. All of these technologies, these creative technologies, the printing press, the internet, all of these technologies change the incentive structure, the ecological structure, which determines who becomes an elite, who falls out of the elite, who strengthens their power, and so on and so forth. So I'm interested in creating technologies. Now, I'm not a big math guy, science guy, but I think that, ideologies are a form of technology. And this idea of just, you see it in Britain, you see this guy, George Galloway, who I have always, I guess, respected in his personal charisma, regardless of his ideology. He has a personal charisma about him. And he has apparently started some new workers' party where he said mass immigration is not a good thing. And he is of the left. So it seems that there is this thing going on where basically you look at the two sides, right? You see basically the job or the incentive of the elite is to globalize because that allows them to extract more money from the globe. If we globalize, then the GDP rises. That's a proven fact. The global GDP rises as we globalize. So there are two vectors of globalization. Generally speaking, in politics, there is the economic globalization. There's the social globalization. The economic globalization allows for the movement of capital around the world. That is capital in the sense of dollars and the yuan and the euro and these types of currencies, workers and things like this. Different companies can move from place to place, lower taxation, lower regulation. So there's a kind of liquidity of financial capital, we might say. And then social globalism or social liberalism, however you want to describe it, is a sort of, social capital becoming liquefied. That, social capital has this effect of preventing or it essentially allows for people, like if someone's a Christian, maybe that's going to inhibit their consumption of pornography. If someone is a Muslim, maybe that's going to inhibit their, desire to spend $5,000 on new pairs of shoes. So the concept of religion and culture creates these archetypes that interfere with consumerism, that interfere with the movement of people for work purposes. So basically, if you are an elite, you support globalism is in your interest. And so you're saying, how can we liquefy both financial capital and social capital, generally speaking? And so that basically you have that situation, and then the average person intuitively understands this is not good for me. It's good for the high. It's not good for the middle. And so the average person is like, okay, I don't like your taxation. I don't like the fact that, for the Republicans, it's like, I don't like the fact that my social capital is being liquefied. I don't like the fact that religion and church is being liquefied. I don't like the fact that gender is being liquefied. I don't like the liquefaction of the social realm. And so the Republican Party exists to say it's a give and take. It's like, okay, we will give you some kind of protection for your social capital, but in exchange, you need to liquefy financial capital. You need to cut down on corporate taxation. You need to cut down on tariffs. You need to allow for the outsourcing of jobs to raise the GDP so that elites can make more money. So that is the calculation. It will give you protection of the social if you allow us to liquefy the financial. Whereas the Democrat Party's typically done the opposite, or this has been the traditional conception of the left, that on the left, we're going to say, all right, well, we will give you protection of the financial. That is, we're going to protect workers' rights, your jobs. We're not going to outsource your jobs. We're going to guarantee you a job, guaranteed income, whether it's welfare, UBI, Social Security, safety net, Medicare, Medicaid. We're going to pay for your health insurance. We're going to protect you on a financial level in a way that maybe isn't beneficial for elites. Maybe if Bernie Sanders or Corbyn come to power, maybe that's really not good for the globalists, in financial terms. But in exchange for that protection of your financial capital, that is your financial safety, your economic safety, your proletariat status, we're going to secure that. But in exchange for that, you need to let us liquefy the social realm. So you need to let us liquefy the cultural scene, religious scene, gender scene. All of those ecologies have to be dissolved and globalized and atomized, individualized, made into these Henry Ford interchangeable parts. Anyone can be anything, anyone can do anything. So there's always this give and take and the left and right that you get something, but to get something, you have to give something. And there's kind of this back and forth and jostling where at the end of the day, the two parties promise, the Republicans promise social stability, the Democrats promise financial stability. But what happens? What happens is they scam their constituency. The Republicans renege on the promise of social stability. They renege on the promise to defend marriage. George W. Bush passed an act. He signed an act in Congress that said the Defense of Marriage Act. He said marriage is between a man and a woman. That his tenure ended in 2008. Here we are in 2019, where all of a sudden it's taboo in the conservative movement because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has shifted the Republican Party so far to the left on social issues that it's now taboo to say you oppose gay marriage. Now you're like the Westboro Baptist Church. Now you're like an extremist. Now you're a terrorist. You know, if you say things like that, now you're totally outside the Buckley-ite Overton window of who is in the conservative movement. It's moved so far in the last 10 years that no one can really keep up with this pace except the people who are directly working with the think tanks in Washington paid by the Koch brothers or whoever it is. So on the other hand, on the left, it's not a good situation either, because the left is promising, yeah, we're going to liquefy the social scene, but we're going to let you keep your workers' rights. Well, that's turning out to be a lie as well. You know, back in the day, you had the left traditionally saying that we're going to protect the common man. We're going to make sure that, the common man can make a living wage. But what has happened over the tenure of these Democratic presidents is that jobs have been outsourced. And, you know, we know this. We've heard this argument before from other people. So I'm just rehashing someone else's analysis. But I guess the conclusion is that the high, really what they're looking to do is they're looking for social liquefaction and financial liquefaction, because that's going to allow for them to centralize power within themselves rather than having decentralized power. So they want to liquefy everything. Currency is a liquefier. That's why they like currency. And the free exchange of currencies, you know, money changing. So then what is the position of the middle? The position of the middle, if it's not the liquefaction of the social realm and the financial realm, it would be the solidification of the social realm and the financial realm. I think I said cultural realm. I meant financial. So what that means is culturally conservative, economically left-wing. That's essentially the position of the middle-class person. The Republican Party, the conservative movement, has done a great job, and they've shown how plastic people are and how easily and gullible and foolish the masses are, that they've been able to fool an entire generation of baby boomers into thinking that Ronald Reagan is your hero, Ronald Reagan is your champion, when he did a huge amnesty. I mean, he's a huge opponent of the middle class, masking himself as the people's champion, had huge popular support. So it just goes to show you how, you know, when you control the media, a billion-dollar industry, you can pretty much make anyone believe everything. There's this two-party system that controls this process, manages it in a way that creates all these fallback mechanisms. Oh, if we hate Reagan, we can always elect Clinton. If we hate Clinton, we can elect Bush. If we hate Bush, we can elect Obama. If we hate Obama, we can elect Trump. And yet all of these candidates push the boundaries of liquefaction. They might slow down liquefaction in the social realm, as Bush did, or they may slow it down in the economic realm. I can't actually think of a time that happened. I mean, I guess Obama was supposed to have regulated the banks in some way. You know, I heard the Glass-Steagall thing. That was a big controversy. But ultimately, all of the money, this is a point I think Kaiser made, you know, a little short clip, but all the money, think about it. Let's say the housing crisis collapses. Basically, banks have made all these loans out to all these people who can't pay their loans. They've said, we're going to give you $1 million loan. You can buy a house. And then it turns out, oh, this person actually has a poor credit score. They were given a loan on no good basis. It was a poor decision. And now they've declared bankruptcy, and now the bank cannot collect the $1 million. So what did the government do in the bank bailout? They said, you're owed $1 million by, 100,000 people or whatever it is. And so it's a multi-billion-dollar bailout. So they said, we'll give the money to the banks so that the banks do not default on these, so that they don't have this huge debt. So basically cancel out the debt for the banks. but they could have just as easily bailed out the people themselves. They could have just as easily bailed out the bankrupt people and said, oh, you have a debt, you have $1 million debt to the bank. Well, we'll just pay you the $1 million and then you won't have the debt. That's called debt forgiveness. In the Bible, there's a concept of the sabbatical that every 7 years, all debts are canceled. That is, you cannot have a debt that lasts longer than 7 years. It's basically a system that prevents usury. Now, the thing about usury is you're not allowed to charge interest, but we understand the concept of inflation. You can also have deflation. And so if you loan someone $200 in 2019, but in 2020, the value of $200 increases, or it might not be currency, it might be cows, it might be grain, whatever it is. You loan someone something, deflation allows for usury, even if you're not directly charging interest. So the idea of a sabbatical is you just kind of nullify this and make it impossible to have a society ruled by creditors and lenders. And essentially, it prevents your economy from revolving around debt. That sort of thing could have been done. It could have been done to cancel out the debts, to say, you know what, you had a debt of $1 million, don't worry about it. But that didn't happen. Instead, the banks were bailed out. So, even Obama, who is supposed to be an economic leftist, he didn't really, you look at the big things he did economically, maybe you say healthcare, maybe that was in favor of the people in some way. Although it seems like a lot of insurance companies lobbied for it. It's a little more complex. But in any case, the liquefaction doesn't seem to stop. So the position of the middle class is always, we want to solidify our financial situation, solidify our cultural situation. And that's just the thing. If you want to betray your middle class origins and become part of the elite, then maybe going to Washington. I think actually the best way to do it is to rise up in the academic system. I think the best way is to go into academia, say all the right things, push postmodernism as far as you can, become the president of Harvard or something. Maybe that's a position of power from which you can actually enter the elite as a middle class person. So I think there still is a meritocracy in America where you can really push the ideology within academia, and you can actually get a very, very high status. It's not exactly lucrative directly, but you can get a pretty high status by doing that. Whereas in politics seems to be less lucrative, or it seems to be difficult. It seems like there are a lot of journalists and volunteers, people who work at think tanks, who are pushing in ideology, not really benefiting. So we'll just continue on with the comments here. When the comments run out, we'll go back to the video. So we've got a plan. We got a good plan here. If you give a poor person $20, they will buy a $20 plastic snowman at CVS. That is true. I disavow plastic snowmen. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to have to disavow the holidays. Before I've been, for the past 2 years, I've been like, do I hate Christmas? I've been asking myself that question. Do I hate Christmas? That sounds so mean. Like I'm not an anti-Christian person. I think people understand that by now. I'm not like a reactive, like, oh, Christianity destroyed the world, it was the cause of everything evil. That's not me. So to hate Christmas, and I do have fond memories of Christmas at times. Christmas it's not always been as bad as it is now. But I guess what I can say is I hate the holidays. I hate the winter holidays. And I hate the plastic snowmen. The lights can be pretty. I like the lights. They are a bit gaudy at times. They are obviously wasting electricity, killing Greta Thunberg. But the plastic snowmen, definitely big. I think basically if you live in a part of the globe where it doesn't snow, you can make a snowman. Like if it's snowing, you can make a snowman. That's fine. That's cool. But plastic snowman, no. I think maybe you can hand carve like a wooden snowman. Like you could do some craftsmanship, but the plastic snowman, that's got to go. I'm not going to say what should be done to plastic snowmen. I'm not going to say that out loud, but I think we all know. What needs to be done. Michael says, so he's continuing. He asks a question. He says, is it better to let poor people burn themselves out, potentially improve future generations of humans? Yeah, that's the libertarian argument. It's like, well, I'm so good, I'm so awesome that like we're just going to have let's broadcast, let's, because I've heard some of these things. There was the porn ban thing. And then you had these libertarians coming out and saying, well, if we allow porn and we promote porn, then only the fittest will survive. This is social Darwinism. This is the idea we should broadcast porn on public TV at all hours of the day. And those people who are weak and stupid will be addicted to porn and they'll destroy their lives and kill themselves. And those people who are strong libertarians, independent, oh, we're so smart, we have all this agency, we're awesome libertarians, we will survive on, we will thrive, we will live on. It's a radical social Darwinism that is the elites. That is the idea of the elites. Liquefy capitals, both social and financial, and the strong will survive. Create a wild, wild west socially, and the strong will survive. Those who are smart, those who have agency, those who have willpower will survive this storm of, absolute chaos. And I don't know, man, because that's a very individualistic idea at the end of the day, because ultimately the way you have to counteract that is by creating a minoritarian cult. You have to create like the Amish to basically create a parallel society. And at that point, if you're creating a parallel society, and it seems like a huge waste of time and resources, right? This is where I guess I am a globalist or an imperialist, where I say like, we should utilize all the potential energies of humanity. The idea that we should just let everybody suffer and die and the strong will survive. It seems like the only people who survive this are the Amish, and they're in a very vulnerable position to have created this parallel society. So the idea of integrating society, integrating the globe into some kind of sustainable cultural ecology is something that works and is not self-destructive, rather than forcing people to go into these parallel societies, which seems like what people are forced to do to survive. You either have to join the Amish or some other really orthodox group in order to survive the social maelstrom. Otherwise, statistically, you're just not going to have kids, or you're going to have one kid, and therefore, basically, you haven't reproduced, right? If you have a mother and father, and they have one child, that's a 50% reduction in the population of a given population. So, statistics bear out that you either have to construct a parallel society like the Amish, the Mormons, or a parallel culture that is completely and radically different and radically separate from what's going on, or you have to have some kind of cultural safety net. Just like the left talks about a social safety net in terms of economics, you have to have a cultural safety net where people are protected from harmful behaviors, culture that is self-destructive. You do that, and then what that allows, from my perspective, is it allows the flourishing of individualism. Because what I see going on is, if everyone is forced into a social maelstrom, where in order to avoid porn culture and antenatal culture, you have to join a parallel society like the Amish, the Mormons, and so on. If you're forcing people into that, then who survives? Who is genetically promoted in that model? It is the people who are collectivists. It is the people who like cults. It's the people who are authoritarian, the people who seek out a cult environment. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying I'm hating on those people, but I'm just saying that's what you're going to get. In the end of the day, you're going to eliminate. I mean, look within Judaism, the Reform Jews are not having kids, or they're marrying outside the religion. The Orthodox Jews are the ones having the kids. They're reproducing. And so you look at future demography for Jews, and it's like, in 50 years or something, there's not going to be any Reform Jews left. They're going to die out, and it's just going to be Orthodox Jews around. Now, there is a conversion process where essentially an Orthodox Jew will have 8 kids. 4 of those kids will leave the Orthodox religion. I mean, this is also a big factor that's been going on for a long time. So it's a little more complicated than that. But I'm just saying, if you create a kind of genetic bottleneck, if you expose everyone to really disastrous cultural memes, whether it's feminism, pornography, whatever, antinatalism, you're going to create a situation where the only people who can survive are the people who are collectivist and authoritarian and who love cults and who never question the cult leader. That's the kind of behavior you're promoting. Whereas if you have a global society, everyone's protected, everyone has a chance to, navigate sort of a safe space, then you do promote a kind of individualism. And I think there's like an argument to be made, like Southern Europe versus Northern Europe. And Southern Europe, or just the Mediterranean in general, the Middle East in general, that more southern region of the world, there is, seemingly a more a social maelstrom, a cultural maelstrom of just random crazy things going on, and people have to you really be adherent to their tribe. And so the fact that we see in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in the Mediterranean generally, that we see more familialism, extended families, tribalism, the fact that we see more of this, and then in Northern Europe, what you see is this more individualism. Why is that? Because I think in Northern Europe, there was not as much social competition going on as there was in the Middle East. You had all these different culture groups fighting, and so tribalism as an instinct was promoted. Whereas in Northern Europe, everyone was forced to cooperate because of the environment, and therefore you get individualism. So if you like individualism, you kind of have to protect people culturally. If you don't give people protection, the result is tribalism. So individualism and globalism are sort of tied together, that sort of spring from Northern Europe. And then this kind of tribalistic mentality that rejects individualism, the individuality, the creativity of the individual, and rejects globalism, and imperialism, ultimately, this narrow-minded parochial mindset of the Amish, it's in a sense, you're not going to take Christianity as an example. You're not going to get Christianity if you create social chaos that forces people into cults. So it kind of depends on, if you are a libertarian, then you believe, yeah, we should make everyone tribalistic, because then you're going to have this rhizomatic tribal structure that can't be destroyed by, someone taking over the media and promoting harmful memes, harmful ideology. If you're a libertarian, you're going to embrace that. If you're a globalist, individualist, imperialist, then you're going to say, maybe that's a problem. Maybe we do want to provide some structure for people. It's like a top-down versus bottom-up. Are you the libertarian who is really interested in, like, everything should be very, that we should have all kinds of, like, plan B, plan C, plan D. Like, if you throw someone on a desert island, they should be able to survive. If you throw them in the Arctic, they should survive. If you throw them in the Sahara, like, the libertarian idea is that we create all these kind of backup systems and fallback systems, and everyone is kept very fit through this constant maelstrom of cultural destruction going on. It's like the tornadoes going on outside, and so everyone has to be like Superman. Or, in the case of Superman, the comic book hero, he grows up on a planet which is heavier gravity. So the libertarians want heavier social gravity, so only the strong survive. Whereas, the imperial, individualist, creative type sensitive person, who, honestly, if you're a sensitive person, you don't survive this culture very well. This culture is surrounding you, and it kind of sucks, and you get depressed and you get sad. And the incentive for the sensitive person is to be like, maybe the state needs to step in and protect people a little bit, right? Whereas if you're like this hard-nosed, pull yourself up by your bootstraps libertarian, then you're like, let them suffer, let them die, and only the strong will survive. So it kind of depends. I think your answer to that question is really based in your personal psychology. Are you a sensitive person, or are you someone who just, I decided I was going to work for 40 hours straight, and, I did it because I wanted to do it, or are you someone who daydreams and you're like, oh, well, I had an idea for a poem last night, and I was staying up late into the night and I started writing poetry. What kind of person are you? That's going to be you're going to possibly determine your answer. So to continue Michael's question, or to intervene on poor people's inability to control themselves in an attempt to improve the world as it is today. Yeah, it's almost like a time preference thing. It's almost like, are you thinking about the future, the far-flung future, or are you thinking about the present day? Do you want to build Greek architecture that can be seen from space today? Or do you want to engineer humanity to be able to suffer, all kinds of environmental disasters? Are you thinking about the present or the future? That's another dynamic. And are people with more impulse control going to be better off riding the downfall of poor people, or will the downfall of these poor people take us all down with them? I mean, ultimately, again, if we want to think about the far-flung future, we're going to keep watching at some point, we'll get back to the Ivan video. And at that point, we're going to discover what he has to say. But I mean, if technology keeps going where it is, it's not going to be a question of poor people versus rich people. You have poor impulse control or good impulse control. Humanity will not be able to compete with these new systems, these revolutionary phenotypes. So in a sense, it doesn't really matter, right? So in that sense, it's like we are here, we are alive today. If you're a scientist, maybe you can contribute to the coming revolutionary phenotype. But if you're not, what are you to do? Are you just to despair, or are you to authentically be yourself? I've had these I've been having these conversations for years. I mean, they just don't end, right? But basically saying that if it's inevitable that humanity becomes obsolete, then whatever replaces us better be better. It better be it better be able to do everything we can do and even better. And if it's not, we need to challenge it. We need to make it better. So in a sense, by resisting the revolutionary phenotype, you are ensuring that whatever comes after us truly is an improvement. If you just let it happen, you encourage it, you say, oh, whatever, we're all going to die anyway, it doesn't matter, then maybe what comes after us is lame and stupid and like the Borg or like an ant colony or something that's not very inspiring. To ensure that whatever comes after us is truly like, the coming of the Heideggerian God or Nietzsche's Übermensch, to ensure that we have to fight against it. We have to resist it if we want it to truly be superior to us. By just relaxing and just, we'll kill ourselves and let it happen, then it could be very lame. It could be the kind of gray goo that people talk about. All right, Spacetime says, seems like almost all UBI money would go into landlords' pockets. There would just be inflation in property rent prices. Yeah, I mean, people have pointed that out ad infinitum. Personally, if I had $1,000 a month, I mean, I guess it depends on the person's situation, whether you're going to use it on rent or not. But there are definitely situations in which I would not use it for rent, where I would be paying zero rent, and I would just have a lot of money, and it would just be awesome. Why are you trying to decide what to do with poor people? Sounds pretty sinister. I don't know. That's what government's all about, dude. That's what government, basically a huge amount of government is just like, what do we do with these poor people? That's like been the question of government since the 19th century with the Chartists in England. Categories like us, in some meaningful sense, often include poor people, but avoid this problem of universality. What resource does the priest caste covet? Well, I think Nietzsche talks about that. The priest caste is coveting the authority, and with authority, you can support its priestly structures. You could even say it's coveting heavenly rewards and spiritual authority and closeness to God. So you could say that's kind of a resource. It's an intuitive resource. It's a quote unquote imaginary resource. It's a potential resource. It is a figurative, poetic resource. It is not something concrete necessarily, but you could say it is a kind of resource or a kind of value. I wonder if a truly international, and on that subject, the concept of transvaluation, that before I move on, the warrior, he wants women, cattle, grain. He wants things he can touch and feel. The priest wants heaven, spirituality, divinity. He wants things he can't touch. So in a sense, the Nietzschean warrior is very sensual and the priest is very intuitive. So there's something interesting there in that shift. If we are shifting back toward the sensual, I hear different layers. I hear different arguments. I mean, people should go check out the Arvol video that was just made a couple days ago. I wonder if a truly international society without labor restrictions between nations would remove these moneyed incentives to bring third world immigration to first world nations. It's a dual thing. Like they're two parts of the same thing, ultimately. If you removed all of the tariffs in the world, it would not change the incentive for third world immigration. Third world immigration has a lot to do with democracy and the democratic aspects of government. All right, we got to scroll back up. We got to scroll way back up. Michael continues from, I guess, what he was saying before about poor people. People with poor impulse control take us down with them. and that the anti-immigration crowd should look to open world economies as a way to reduce. Yeah, I disagree. So it's hard to follow. I hate the super chat. People should send me like Twitter links so I can. Well, I guess Twitter has a character limit as well. People should send me somehow a text link. I guess people can't do text links. People should speak leet speak. You should remove all the vowels from your sentence so we can try to jam as much as possible. No, don't do that. But I wish I could control the character limit. I wish I could. I mean, YouTube, give the power to the creator. You say it's 200 characters. Let me make it 4,000 characters. And then let me say you can make one comment every minute or something. And if I see you spamming, I will ban you. I will block you. I will hide your comments. So you can't just post a wall of text and remove everyone's ability to comment. I mean, I think spam is more obscuring people's vision than a big long comment. So yeah, shame on YouTube. Shame on YouTube for being a monopoly power unregulated by the government. I think Trump's next executive action should be to increase the character limit of chats on live streams on YouTube. I think that should be his next executive order. While we're controlling, matters of political speech, I think that's the next thing he should do. Okay, yeah, that I'm gonna have to disagree with you, Mike. And then we go to Fourth D. He was buying cigs. So Fourth D, apparently he is absolutely neotenous. That is very neotenous, bro. Unless the punch in the 45-degree skull is coming from an elevation downward, in which case it will generate more force because there is less recoil. Michael, you have defeated my argument. Absolutely a very succinct rebuttal. I am just totally destroyed. So if you're on top of somebody or you're at the same, let's say you're of the same height and you're punching each other, normally, if you just look at the biomechanics of punching, okay? I don't know if I can demonstrate this, but look at where your hands are. If you relax your hands, everyone do this with me. Relax your hands, okay? Where our hands are relaxed and they're slapping our thighs, right? So they're down here. In order to punch somebody in the head, you have to bring your hands up. You have to bring your hand up. So what's the angle? It's under the chin, which is why you want this big, strong, massive jaw to protect yourself if you're an MMA fighter. You want a big, giant, meaty jaw. You want this jaw to just be like, be absolutely dominating your facial features. That's what you want, right? Because punches on, like, just from the fact that anatomically the resting position of the hands are below the belt. In terms of even if you have your hands up, right? People talk about hands up. Keep your hands up in a fight. Keep your hands up near your face. Guard your face. Protect your face. Even then, it's coming straight at a person. I mean, unless you're very tall, unless you're like a 7-foot tall man and you're punching down on someone who's like 4 feet tall and you're just wailing down on them, then yeah, then the whole head angle thing just seems silly. But I'm telling you, if two people are of the same size, then having a sloped forehead is a good idea. And yeah, I mean, I don't know how better I can prove that. All right, never trust someone with a sloped forehead. Disavow. All people are equal. We trust all people. I am talking about, what do we call it? Dolichocephaly. I'm just remarking upon it as like as a fun fact. I don't draw any kinds of conclusions. I think it influences how people perceive you. The shape, I think, look, if you look beautiful, people act differently toward you than if you look ugly. And I know these are Eurocentric norms and normative standards of beauty. I'm not trying to reinforce them. I'm not promoting them. I'm not saying if you look ugly, you're a bad person. If you look beautiful, you're a good person. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you are considered classically beautiful, normatively beautiful, according to Eurocentric standards, then people act really differently to you than if you do not fit that bill. And in fact, if you're the opposite of that bill, if you're asymmetrical, a burn victim, you have a genetic disease, deformities, people treat you in a different way. Sexually, they treat you in a different way in terms of friendship, sociality. really changes the way that people treat you, and therefore it changes your personality in that way. So I'm not saying ugly people are inherently bad. I'm just saying ugly people are going to be socialized in a different way, which is going to change. It's going to change how they develop in their personality. So that's the argument. It's a very sophisticated argument, but it does abide by the YouTube terms of service. Okay, where are we going with Mike? As more force will be directed toward the unmovable Earth. Yeah, that's we debunked that. I want to know why the FBI is pushing to lose. I don't know. You'll have to ask the FBI. I'm not on the inside. I have no clue what's going on. I'm totally out of the loop. Nationalists seek to preserve sovereignty. The word homogeneity means the differences between natures can't be nurtured. The pressures are kept in trade by borders, trade restrictions. Click accept. You misspelled the word borders, and therefore your argument is incorrect. Gregory says the tribes themselves had warriors. They were already hunters. Okay, Gregory. Okay, Gregory. You don't understand the concept of a specialized warrior band. You don't understand the Indo-European expansion. If all these tribes had warriors and there was no such thing as a specialized warrior culture, then explain the Indo-Europeans, Gregory. Yeah, give me your cows. Yeah, Gregory, give me those cows. You know, I guess the modern version is shove you in a locker, give you a wedgie. The pre-modern version is give me your cows. Yo, give me them cows. Hand over those cows right now before I do something drastic. Just want to let you know, I'm gonna need those cows next week. Okay, when I come back here next week, I'm gonna need some cows. Okay, just saying, I'm gonna need a few cows. I would hate for something bad to happen. Hate for your crops to catch on fire. You know, I'm just saying weird things happen. Weird things happen. I'm just saying, gonna need some cows. I understand that, but I'm thinking, what is the moneyed interest in the importation of third world immigrants to first world nations? Well, yeah, you answer your own question, which I imagine is cheap labor. So what would be a way to allow rich people to exploit cheap labor without these immigration policies? Automation, I suppose. INTJ gang, jump scare time. Have I been jump scaring people? Have I been scaring people? Hopefully not. I try to be calm, cool, collected, provide smooth transitions, never abruptly start screaming. That's not me. I missed the Myers-Briggs conversation. I'm curious, what did Ken come back as? Well, the last time I took the test, I thought I was INTJ, but I took a look back at some things, and I don't know that I truly am INTJ. I don't know that. I don't know, because I first took the test. This was like 10 years ago. I took the test and I was like, I'm INTJ. And then for the rest of my life, I'm like, yeah, I'm the rarest type. I'm the mastermind. I'm so cool. I'm special. I'm a special snowflake. I'm INTJ. And then I looked back on it. And then I started to doubt that. And I was like, am I seriously INTJ? I think one of the issues is you look at the J and the P. And I don't know, the absolute, the black and white aspect of it. Like, if I'm around people I like, if I'm in a situation that I like, people perceive me as extroverted. People say, I tell people, oh, I'm an introvert. And they're like, no, you stop lying. That's a sick joke. You're not, that's an insult. What is this? Are you insulting me, calling yourself, what does that even mean? Like, people, I'm surprised sometimes the way that if I say I'm an introvert, people are like, oh, that's ridiculous. Of course you're an extrovert. Of course you love talking and you like to be the center of attention. But then other people observe me and they only see the introversion. So it's very contextual, right? Even that aspect. But I would say the least controversial part of Myers-Briggs for me would be the introversion thing. Just in general, if you throw me among strangers, I'm probably going to be more introverted than extroverted. And I guess the word strangers here, like it depends on the social geography and the social context, I suppose. And then the prefer to take in information, I would say I tend to be more N than S. But there are times I suppose I'm not totally not S, right? So maybe that's not too controversial. And then we've got the thinking and the feeling. Make decisions and using logical reasoning, justice, fairness, enjoy finding flaws in an argument, reasonable, level headed. I tend to think I'm a little more thinking, a little more cool headed. But then you got the feeling, you've got basically empathy, harmony, forgiveness, warm. I mean, I would like to be feeling. Personally, I look at the thinking, I look at the feeling, I see thinking people are like robots. Thinking people are like evil robots, and feeling people seem to be like warm and motherly and friendly, and they're just so nice and angelic and Christ-like, So I'd prefer to be the feeling, but I think probably objectively I tend more toward the thinking than the feeling. And then you've got the J and the P. And I think this is the more in the INTJ. This is probably the most controversial one for me as far as where do I classify. I prefer to have matters settled. Rules and deadlines should be respected. Dude, when in my life have I ever respected rules and deadlines? Never. Never have I respected rules and deadlines. Step-by-step instructions. I mean, I do like details that they're just more coherent. They're easier to, if I'm trying to figure out something, I want you to be as explicit, like treat me like I am literally like have like a diagnosis of autism, and run through it like extremely in a detailed instruction. I need that sometimes. If you just say, yeah, you're gonna kind of like fiddle with it and stuff. What does that mean, fiddle with it? Do you mean turn it right? Like, which size wrench do I use? So obviously there's some times when I am a little bit J. And then make plans, want to know what you're getting into. I mean, I guess the thing about the J is you prefer predictability and familiarity. And I get that. I think everyone to some extent likes to have, like, you come home at the end of the day, everything's where you left it. It doesn't look like a bomb went off. There's some sort of coherence to your life. And that's what I call anchoring. So I think it's important to have anchors. I understand the value of anchors. I feel the value of anchors. But then you get the perceiving. And the perceiving, you leave your options open. You see, the rules and the deadlines are kind of flexible. You improvise, you make things up, you're spontaneous, you enjoy surprises and new situations. This is the perceiving. And, all of those things, I see the ways in which, I like new stuff. And I am very flexible with the rules and deadlines, just in general. So I don't know. Maybe I am an INTJ. Maybe it's like we've reached the second level of hipsterism, where it's like, first I was excited to be the INTJ because that's the special snowflake. I'm so unique. And then I see this INTJ community. Oh, we're all INTJ, and we have this. We're all anarcho-capitalist INTJs, and we're so quirky. And I'm like, oh, guys, I don't think I'm an INTJ anymore. It's like my rebellious spirit. I'm like, okay, well, if if a group exists, then all of a sudden, and that group exists around some kind of ideological orientation or conception of themselves, I'm like, no, I have to be an individual. I have to be quirky. I cannot fit into your little box. I have to somehow be outside of that. So that's probably the most controversial aspect of the Myers-Briggs for me. But, I have my own cognitive biases. So maybe I'm going to need some expert to do a psychoanalysis of me. Do we have some Freudians in the chat? Do we have some psychoanalysts, maybe some Jungians in the chat? They can do a little psychoanalyzation on the live stream. Let's see. I don't remember what letter I had, but it said mediator. Okay, I don't know it well enough to just tell you what that is. But you can also use a shiny rock to attract a woman. That's true. I can use shiny rocks to attract women. I can use my chains. I can attract women. Yeah, that is definitely true. Grug used shiny rock to attract cave women. Yeah, Grug's smart and have many little Grugs. I was a logician myself. Indeed, even with bald head, goofy teeth, and a bad smell, the use of such rocks works quite well. That is that is true. Shiny rocks will get you far, dude. Shiny rocks, they are very good with the women. Women say women be like, me no like shiny rock, but Grug be like, here shiny rock, and the women, they be coming, so that's how it do be. The turbulent or self-assured. Yeah, I'm not. Am I self-assured or turbulent? I'm probably just gonna say more turbulent than self-assured. Probably without reading through a listicle of what that means. I'm probably just gonna say turbulent. Grog enjoys seeing you. Can't recall. I took it years ago. We're talking about Myers-Briggs logician. I feel ill at ease with personality tests. Reduce people to some finite dimensional personality space. Agree. Personality, the modern reductionist priesthood without accountability to that role. Yes, I mean, obviously, that is what it is, right? Dio Strabo retracts the message, which is a tragedy. Fourth D collection of 4 letters is somehow different to Zazir, but I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know what that means. Thoughts on weird stuff that's going to be weird? Thoughts on being weird? Well, being weird is in fact weird. It is in fact quirky. You know, if let's say theoretically I had branded myself as a boring conservative, let's say I branded myself as someone who believes in common sense. I branded myself as someone who believes in traditionalism. And I said, I believe in common sense and traditionalism. And I am against everything new. And I am against anything zany or weird. I don't like people doing things weird socially. I don't like changing things up. I think we should be traditional. I think we should go back to the way it was in the 1950s. If that's my brand, well, that could be boring, right? That could be kind of boring. People could get bored of that. I might attract like a bunch of boomers, and it wouldn't really be dynamic, would. So, you know, if you ask me, what are your thoughts on like weird stuff? Then I would be like, hey, you know, I've branded myself as this fuddy-duddy conservative, this person who just wants to go back to tradition, just turn back the clock to the 1950s. Everything will be great. You know, the further we go back, the better. The less technology we have, the better. Everything's great. If you're going to do that, then maybe you mix it up a little bit. Maybe you show that we can still make fun of ourselves. We can still have fun. We can still play around. And then maybe you throw some weird stuff in there. Maybe you just throw some weird stuff and people are like, what's this weird stuff? It's disturbing. And it repels boomers and it repels people who are a little bit too traditional. You know, you say, okay, we're traditionalists, but we also joke about weird stuff. And therefore, like, we are this Generation Z, like, we're very ironic. And I think it's a tactic to sort of groom. Maybe that's the wrong word in this context, but it's a tactic to essentially morphologically affect your audience so that your audience is dynamic, ironical, takes itself not too seriously, and that gives you a bit of this ironic shield. You can say everything's a joke. It's playful. It's fun. It's chaotic. It's shamanic. It's shamanic. It's genuinely shamanic. So that is my opinion, but that's not my branding. I don't really brand myself as like, let's go back to the 1950s. I'm a conservative. You know, I think everyone should be Catholic necessarily. I'm not hating on the Catholics. It's just not my branding. So for me to embrace that personally, it doesn't seem like the right balance, right? Once you've achieved a certain level of weirdness, like if you're just the archetypal normal guy, like if you are the embodiment of Wojak, which people have accused me of looking like Wojak. I think it's Brian Nugent accuses me of looking like Wojak. But if you have that personality, if you're like a normal guy and you're almost too normal, you're almost too predictable, then maybe you throw in some weird jokes. But if you're, I think instinctively people can tell that if you are a eccentric person, if you're a little bit off your rocker, then maybe chill out, cool it with some of that weird stuff. You have to. Whereas the conservative-minded person has to put forth effort to try to make himself attractive or interesting. I mean, Milo has played with this dynamic, you know, that, oh, it's like I'm like a crazy. Can I even say what he is? How do I say, what's the politically correct term? I'm a crazy LGBTQ person, but I'm also a conservative. So that kind of paradox creates a kind of shamanic energy. Whereas if you already are sort of a zany person, then you have to kind of understand that by putting, it's almost Zizek is sort of the opposite of Milo in a way. Zizek's like, I'm a Marxist, but also I think Donald Trump is interesting. So you have to understand who you are. If you're a conservative person psychologically, you sort of have to make weird jokes to make yourself dynamic. Whereas if you're instinctively a weird person, then interjecting some conservative element there will keep you interesting. If you go too far afield in either direction, it kind of becomes incoherent and lacks that proper paradoxical energy that we're trying to get at. Carefully, you're riding that line of not being too much one way or the other. You're walking that tightrope. So that is my opinion. Neither side actually protect, they attack. True. We need, I'm going to disagree with Gregory. Oh boy, I'm going to disagree with that. Double liquefaction. Yes, we do have double liquefaction going on. We need the Defensive Marriage Act was signed by Bill Clinton. No way. You gotta be joshing me. Are you joshing me right now? I mean, Clinton was a little bit before my time. No way. But he also, to be fair, Clinton also assigned a don't ask, don't tell. So he criticized the law as divisive and unnecessary, but nonetheless signed it. So he wasn't exactly pushing it. I think it was the Bush administration who proposed a constitutional amendment. So DOMA did not receive constitutional amendment, but like Obama. So I got things mixed up. I guess Clinton introduced it, or he didn't introduce it. He signed the law, and then Bush wanted to make it constitutional, and that was the art. This was this was before my time. It's like this is me like referencing the dinosaurs, ancient history. So it's hard. Baloney, yeah, malarkey. There's a lot of malarkey going around. Does a slope forehead toward the back mean? It just means you can take a punch a little bit better. Low brain volume in the frontal cortex. That's also true. Something to do with being aerodynamic. Could be trolling. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can use liquefaction, or we can say liquefaction. I don't know about liquidation. I don't know about that. I haven't thought of myself that way. Don't know what that's referring to. Liquefaction of categories is the end times prophecy. Yeah, it's another word to lose. Deterritorialization is another way to say that. But I think that is, I like liquefaction, 5 syllables. Deterritorialization, 9 syllables. You can tell me you have a word with 5 versus 9 syllables. There's no question liquefaction is better. How should I take advantage of the liquefaction of things in my own life? I don't know, dude. It kind of depends on who you are, where you are, what you're doing. What should I do to improve my life? Well, I don't know, dude. Where are you at? How can I tell you how to improve if I don't know where you're at? Yeah, tell me your autobiography. Tell me about yourself. What's your relationship with your parents? Welcome to the Stefan Molyneux Show. Tell me, do you hate your parents? Hi, I'm Jesse Lee Peterson. Did you forgive your parents? Usury is okay if you're lending to cattle. I mean, in a sense, that's what domestication is, right? You're feeding the cattle. You're like, here's some grain. And the cattle's like, whoa, all this free grain. This is awesome. And then you kill the cattle and you eat the cattle. And it's like, oh, no, I'm repaying my debt. So, yeah, I think Nietzsche has a concept of the debtor and debt, and I haven't really got into that. But that is something. I mean, domestication is a form of usury, right? That is the vegan take. You take advantage of it so that you solidify and you have an advantage. I beg your pardon, Obama was a constitutional lawyer. Okay, I don't know what that's in response to, but yeah, I definitely have a high respect for Obama. It wasn't until I saw Cory Booker on the debate stage that I realized what a rare gem Obama was. It wasn't until I saw Cory Booker up there and Keith Ellison and some of these people, because Keith Ellison is just too ideological. And then you've got Cory Booker, who's just, we all know what's going on with him. We all know what Cory Booker's got going on. I can't say, but we all know what he has going on. But Obama, he was not ideological. He didn't care about ideology. He had all that. He was like connected to the Weather Underground. That was the Fox News angle, but he didn't care. Like he was like he would flirt with communists, neoliberals. He didn't care. He would flirt with everybody. He's a very flirty person. He flirts with everybody. And you compare him to Cory Booker, and can I say in my personal opinion, Obama, you just put the faces side by side and you say, wow, Obama was a gem. Like can we ever have another Obama? I mean, you just look in general, you just look out at what exists out there. It's like Obama was such a rare gem that, I understand Hillary was sad in 2008 when Obama won. She wanted to be the president, but Obama was a rare gem. Hillary Clinton is a dime a dozen. There are plenty of women out there who are just as good at politics as Hillary Clinton, if not better. Whereas Obama, really a special man. I do respect the uniqueness of Obama as a constitutional lawyer. I think there is an urgency for middle class folks to push for a spot in the upper class. Yeah, class anxiety. And that has to be the goal. Use genetic engineering to elevate poor people. All right. I mean, you could say in a sense, if you change the genetics, are they really the same people anymore? That's the big question. What is it? The ship of Theseus? Let's see. Ship of Theseus. I don't know how to spell Theseus. Ship of Theseus. Yes. That is posed by Heraclitus and Plato. If you replace the constituent parts of the ship, is it still the same ship? What is the concept of identity? What does this really mean? Is it like a Platonic idea or is it something material? Then we're talking about genetics. I mean, this is a deep philosophical question. Seems to be what everyone's advocating for with this push to liquidation. Jeff Koons will make Ken a giant plastic snowman of shiny polished steel. Yeah, I'm not a fan of steel art or steel constructions. Let's take a look at Jeff Koons. Let's see what he's about. Oh, God, Jeff Koons. Jeff Koons, you got to go. Although some of the Greek statue work is kind of interesting. It's got that, Greek statue wearing sunglasses vibe. So that's a little bit better, but the balloon rabbit thing, Jeff Koons. Come on, Jeff. Seriously, the balloon rabbits. Yeah, this is not my preferred aesthetic. Oh, Jeff Koons. New York Times article. Stop hating Jeff Koons. Okay, thank you for confirming that I was correct to feel the way I did. Thank you, New York Times. Yeah, you look at him. You look at Jeff Koons. You look at him with it, and he's like doing this. He's doing this thing, this Jeff Koons thing. That's Jeff Koons. Don't know who's worse, commies or lulberts. Personally, lulberts. Just my personal opinion, but there are exceptions. Some I assume are good people, like Ivan the Heathen. Some I assume are good people, but for me, it's going to have to be. I prefer the commies. We need to pour money into life extension technology, said the billionaire. Said the billionaire. What a weird thing to say. Not a bannable thing to say, but a very weird thing to say. I think Jeffrey Epstein said that once. Mike plans on having 3 kids. Pravada has a 4th on the way now. Congratulations, Pravada. Which will boost Ken's viewership to near 30. This is not a children's show. According to the laws, child protection laws that YouTube follows, children are not allowed to watch this show. This is not a children's program. This is an adult program. So I'm going to have to disavow. This chat deserves to be the new aristocrats. I don't know about that. I don't know that I don't know that I deserve to be the new aristocrats. I mean, there's like a question of becoming worthy. Like the NRX, they're like, become worthy, become the new aristocrat. Has anyone actually ever done that? I'm sure it's, meritocracy happens, but like people who are consciously like, I'm going to become the new aristocrat. Yeah, it's the same thing as like people who follow Nietzsche. It's like, do you have a lot of power in your life, or is it the like? It seems to me that when people like fetishize power, fetishize aristocracy, fetishize when they create it into a fetish object, it kind of shows their distance and lack of potentiality toward ever reaching that object. Like the more you put it on a pedestal, seems the further away a lot of people get. Whereas people who are like, I don't know, because obviously there are people who fetishize power who do become very powerful, but I just think it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing the way people fetishize power, and then they're further to it than the average person. So there's definitely there's definitely something to consider there. Life extension is best achieved through reincarnation. Reincarnation technology, BTFO's life extension technology. I would say Darwinian evolution has borne that out. There are certain species, I believe, of jellyfish that are technically immortal. That is to say, there is no like process by which the jellyfish can die unless it's eaten by a predator or killed through like some environmental disaster, hurricane or whatever. Like the jellyfish just keeps growing new cells and the old cells die, growing new cells. But, that's very particular to the jellyfish. Whereas I think most organisms understand that it's better to invest resources in reproduction, that is reincarnation, rather than life extension. QST has entered. Don't know who that is. When did the pull yourself up by your bootstraps enter the American mythology? Skeptical, it's been around for any amount of time prior to the boomer generation. I think it specifically has to do with the fact that in the 1950s, a man could get a job, put himself through college. I mean, college was free. The GI Bill made college free for every single person who was in the army, which was a huge amount of the baby boomer population, a specific generation. They got all this free college, free money. They're just money's thrown at them because Europe was destroyed. You have to understand, Europe was completely destroyed, and at this time, Europe essentially became a colony of America. And Europe was generating all this economic activity, and America was, benefiting from that. So for the baby boomers, they grew up in this time of just infinite wealth, infinite opportunity, infinite possibility. You can be a car mechanic and support your wife and kids, and she can stay at home with the kids. I mean, it's just such an incredible period of time. And the baby boomers are just on average not very intelligent. Just like, I mean, they have, what's the average IQ? 100? They're just average people. And they say, well, when I was growing up, everything was, they won't say things were easy. They won't say things are easy because there was probably a lot more manual labor. There was a lot more bullying. There was a lot more social pressure. Like things in certain senses, you had to be social. Like you couldn't just live in your basement and have, Order Eats or Uber Eats. You couldn't have Uber Eats deliver your groceries, deliver your fast food. Like things legitimately were less convenient. You couldn't look something up on the internet. You had to go to a library. If you want to know something, you have to read a book. You had to learn Latin in school. So school was harder. Certain aspects of life were in fact harder for the baby boomers. It wasn't all just easy. It wasn't like they just lived. They were all, and the rate of obesity was lower, so people were more active. Like day-to-day life was more inconvenient. You couldn't just even there was no such thing as a cell phone. Telephones were less convenient. You had to look people up in the phone book. So there were a lot of things that just made daily life kind of more laborious in a certain sense. And so you had to work to get things, but opportunities were plentiful, and there was a culture that just before you had the Great Depression. So the Great Depression basically conditioned people to be very hard workers. And then you have this economic explosion in the 1950s. And so from the baby boomer perspective, they're looking at the 60s and the 70s, and they're looking at this progression, this generational progression. And to them, it seems like everyone's getting lazier. And, why don't you just work hard? Because when I was a kid, I worked hard. And I had a job and I went to college and I got my PhD or whatever it is. Why can't you kids do that? Why do you have depression, anxiety? Why do you have all these problems? Why are you concerned with gender politics or racial politics? Why do you care about all this stuff? It doesn't really make sense to the baby boomers. Although the other perspective we have to understand is the baby boomers funded the 1960s revolutions. They funded civil rights. They funded all these things, the silent generation as well. So there's a generational disconnect. They don't understand. It's like they think of the United States as a system where you input hard work and the output is like money, success. And they don't quite understand the institutional changes, cultural changes. Literally, you know, baby boomers didn't teach their kids how to be good people. Generation X did not teach kids how to be good people. It's not their fault. It's a huge cultural, it's a civilizational thing, but they don't understand. It's like, why don't you have good work ethic? It's like, well, I was never forced to. No one ever taught me to. I was always held by the hand. My experiences were very different. I wasn't forced to socialize. I wasn't bullied, you know? So they were all there. I was born in a padded room and I grew up weak as a result. And baby boomers don't understand this. They're like, well, just be strong. Just become strong. Just be cool, man. Just be strong. Just be successful. Just have a positive attitude. Just give them a firm handshake. Look them right in the eye. So there's a disconnect. Baby boomers don't realize how screwed up things have gotten. And there's a contextual thing, World War II, the after effects. So like it's possible that the baby boomer economy could never be sustained, that America could never be that good for that long. Although you look at some protectionism stuff and maybe, you know, workers could have it that good. Certainly workers in other countries, you know, have it a lot better. Germany is a good example. Workers have it way better in Germany. Construction workers in Germany, they don't need to, you can go to some of these countries in Europe where they have working class construction workers who are making 40 grand a year, just doing manual labor because they're in a union. Whereas in America, not as much protection. It's a little bit harder. There was Horatio. Oh, geez, I hate YouTube. I hate how it scrolls down. Okay, who is Horatio Alger? Is that sounds to me like an FBI dude? Is my hate Horatio Alger? Distinguished Americans, young adult novels. Boys Home Weekly, impoverished boys and their rise from humble backgrounds to lives of middle-class security. Rags to riches, the Gilded Age. The Gilded Age lasted from the 1870s to about 1900. Came into use by Mark Twain in the 1920s, 1930s. Okay. Yeah. I'm not saying social mobility doesn't exist. I would send all my UBI super chats to Ken. Well, we got to get to 1,000 subscribers before we even talk about that. Bootstrap Pride Worldwide. Okay. Zhu, is that how you pronounce his name? Zhu? Let's do a little Googling here. Let's get on our Googles. Let's see. Oh, geez. I'm getting some ancient Chinese stuff. Emperor Gaozu of Han. Emperor Gaozu. Let's see how good. Tell me how to pronounce this, Google. Allow me to become a speaker of many languages. Chinese. Zhu Huanzhang.
Zhu Yanzhang.
Okay. Zhu Yangzhang is apparently his name. Okay. LOL. Nice. Me as a 6'4" giant, I am almost always punching from an elevation. Yeah, certainly height is an advantage. If you're tall and you can rain down blows, you got a good position there. Pretty sure Skeletor has the best jaw possible. Arvel just uploaded. Oh man, you're cucking Ivan. If that's true, you've cucked Ivan, Arvel. What have you done? People need to upload on different days, right? Have you even read Locke? Oh boy, that's a spicy title. Oh, and look at this aesthetics. You've got a pond. You have a sunset, the forest. You know what I like. You know what I'm about. That's what I'm about. I like it. All right, so we might have to go to that. We might have to speed through these comments so we can. Now we have 2 big videos to watch. Eternal Galaxy Brains, a new Arvel video. Brian Deleuze provides an unnecessarily sophisticated expansion of Foucault's discipline and control. Arboreal versus dictatorialization. I mean, I don't know. Rolling on the floor laughing. Yeah, but Deleuze has funny hair. And I don't know. Foucault is just too Chad. Foucault has a good job. Foucault, I'm sorry. I'm using this Anglo pronunciation. Foucault You think he's dolichocephalic? You think he's got the dolichocephaly? You think he has a strong jaw? I mean, Foucault. I want to look up young pictures. I want to see Foucault with hair. Foucault young. Let's see what Foucault looked like when he was young and he still had hair. Yeah, Foucault. Foucault wearing like leather jackets and glasses. Foucault looking very Chad. Foucault also has this thing where his skin, like he's bald and he's kind of tannish or whatever. And so I don't know what that makes. People can have different opinions on Foucault, I guess, the way he looks. But Foucault, if I had to pick philosophers and it was like, oh, you think you're smart? Try to defend your philosophy in the cage. Defend your philosophy with your fists. Let's see how much you really care about philosophy. We're going to pitch you in hand-to-hand combat. Nietzsche would get absolutely pummeled. He would probably be at the bottom of the list. Weakly man, didn't climb mountains, very weak, obsessed about the will to power, submissive. Whereas Foucault, I would bet money on Foucault. Schopenhauer was theoretically pushing women down the stairs. I don't know how he would do against a man, but Schopenhauer had a violent side to him. Deleuze, you've got Deleuze there. Deleuze has this very puffy hair going on. So you've got all these different guys. That's exciting, right? Heidegger, how would Heidegger do? Heidegger has this pretty weak jaw. I don't know how Heidegger would do. I've never seen these guys in action, but Foucault just looks like a guy. He exercises. He's got a leather jacket. He moves around. I've also heard that Deleuze, actually Guattari, see what Guattari young looks like. See what Guattari. Guattari doesn't really have a very, he doesn't look that interesting to me. Just kind of looks like a normal guy. But Guattari apparently he started a leftist cult of like, we have to abandon all morality and like abandon monogamy and like be perfectly polyamorous. So he started a cult, and he would find out that like people were not wife sharing properly. He would hear like they're trying to like be monogamous, so he would go around and he'd like beat people up. So you got some violent philosophers out there. You got philosophers. I almost said velocitors. You got some philosophers out there. They're throwing hands. So that's why I appreciate Foucault. But I guess maybe Foucault, he's got too much toxic masculinity. Maybe you look at Foucault and you're like, this guy is too strong. He is too handsome. Maybe we need a little more puffy hair. Maybe we need a little something different we need to lose. So I don't know. I think Deleuze and Foucault, I keep saying Foucault, but I think they're different. I think they have different things to say. I think Foucault is more interested. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. I think Deleuze talks about wolves. I think that's something Deleuze talks about. So I haven't read these guys. I don't know what the difference is. Boreal versus rhizome. Great point. Thank you. It makes sense. You're a robot. That's why you like AI. You've discovered me. I've been found out. Alexa, alter ego. Doesn't look like. Okay. What about being into GA? Yeah, maybe. I got ENTJ, but I don't pay too much attention. Tell me about your parents. Yeah. When is the call-in show? Well, let's say first I get 1,000 subscribers, then I'll say if you want me to schedule a call-in show, I'm probably a couple $100, right? Because we're gonna need to figure out a cell phone situation or a Skype situation, some way that people can call. I guess a Discord situation. People are gonna call in and we're gonna talk. I don't really want to do that, but hey, for enough money, anything is possible, right? For enough money, that is the liquefaction of the capitalist system. We can be transformed into anything that the market demands. If the market demands we have a call-in show, well, for the right price, anything's possible. Would you consider talking to someone who's probably going to be banned off YouTube by the end of the year? I've been asked this exact question last year, and I think my answer was a very long-winded no. Usually when people ask me, would you go on this person's channel? Would you go on that person's channel? Usually my answer is like, I try to be nice, and I try to like give some like long-winded, like philosophical, like, well, I'm just not in this place right now where I want to be going on. I don't really want to promote my content because I'm still like refining my ideas. So like, maybe later, like thanks, but no thanks. And like, I tend to do these and they tend to get me in trouble rather than just saying no. It's like when I tend to try to like give people the time of day and try to explain like, here's why I don't want to do this. It just seems to infuriate them more. Like they get more angry and they just get more persistent. So maybe just a dismissive no. But, maybe in an alternative universe where like YouTube is run by the government with the First Amendment and things like that, maybe in an alternative universe. But in this universe, we are playing it safe. If you ask women to rate the physical attractiveness of this list of millionaires, they will be a standard deviation if you haven't mentioned that. That is true. That's absolutely true. Ken doesn't understand how taxi making all these thoughtful comments are. It's true. It's true. I will never understand. I'd like for others to be able to enjoy this channel, and I think if you went on there, it would get very close to the... See, here's the thing, Pravada. Here's the thing you don't understand. It's not my responsibility to get to 1,000 subscribers. It's not my responsibility to promote myself. It's your responsibility to promote me. It's your responsibility to make me popular. All these people saying, well, you could do this. You could go on this channel. You could cover this topic. You could answer this question. Not my responsibility. It's your responsibility. You want it to happen. People want to see something. They want something to happen. You want to call and show. You want an old video. You want something like that. Well, you're going to have to work for it, buddy. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's your responsibility to make this thing happen. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to have a chill live stream. I'm just going to do what I like to do. I'm just going to hang out. I'm going to read some live chats. I'm going to give my thoughts. I'm going to tell everyone what I think. Just kind of hang out, do what I like to do. And if you want super chats, then you're going to have to work for it, right? But then Mike says in response, he says, we don't want him to receive super chats. We get super chat level responses to regular chats. That's true. That's another thing. By me reading the live chat, I'm basically incentivizing people to keep me at like 999 subs. In fact, we're getting to some deep levels here. What's actually going to happen is I'm going to get to 999 subs, and you're going to have people unsubbing from me just to make sure I can't receive super chats, but they're still going to check in on my channel every day to just make sure I haven't uploaded anything, just to make sure they're going to keep checking in, but they don't want me to have 1,000 subs. So that's like the real deep levels that we're getting to, because otherwise I'm going to start ignoring the live chat. I'm just going to focus on the super chats, right? Let's see. The shiny rock industry. Every kiss begins with K. Yeah, that is true. Every kiss does begin with K. This is true. I take it all back. Yeah, you've seen the error of your ways. I'm Wojak. I am John Cochran, but I am not a ginger. I do not have orange hair. So I don't see how I can be John Cochran. I think we have a split. Some people have made a cerebral detachment from anchors and are escaped to the sea from the port. Others are defending the city gates. Could be true. Let's see. We've got from his recent videos, it seems like Woes noticed that defending the gates is a lost cause. Yeah, I don't know what he's doing. I don't really know where he's going. But here's what I'll say. I say Bruce Lee was right. Be like water, my friend. Be like water. Be kind of loosey-goosey. Be sort of formless. I'm just stretching. I'm just stretching the back. Just stretching out. be sort of formless. And then when people attack you, it's like, it's I'm just exploring ideas. I'm asking questions. Solid joke. Just be kind of formless. If you're like, we must defend our people, like, then that's when you make yourself, that's when you sort of make yourself into this solid object. And Bruce Lee would say, don't be a solid object, just be sort of a liquefied, just sort of be like the ocean. And then when people start punching you, they're just going to get water splashed in their face. Nothing's going to happen because we're just liquid. We're very Aquarian. We are like, we have the spirit of Aquarius, right? A very healthy relationship with the parents. That's good. Endoplasmic reticulation. I think you mean endoplasmic reticulation. What is that about, by the way? I remember endoplasmic. Oh, endoplasmic reticulation, biology for kids. The endoplasmic reticulum is a type of organelle found in eukaryotic cells, which are organisms that have a nucleus enclosed within membranes, unlike prokaryotes that have no membrane-bound organelles. Oh, that's interesting. That form an interconnected network of flattened membrane-enclosed sacs or tube-like structures known as cisternae, like a cistern. The membranes of the endoplasmic reticulum are continuous with the outer nuclear membrane. The endoplasmic reticulum occurs in most eukaryotic cells, but it's absent in red blood cells and spermatozoa. There are two types of endoplasmic reticulum, the rough and the smooth. The outer cytosolic face of the rough endoplasmic reticulum is studded with ribosomes that are the sites of protein synthesis. The rough endoplasmic reticulum is especially prominent in cells such as the hepatocytes. A hepatocyte is a cell of the main parenchymal tissue of the liver. The hepatocytes make up 55% of the liver's mass, and they're involved in protein synthesis, storage, and the transformation of carbohydrates. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum lacks rhizomes and functions in lipid synthesis, but not in metabolism, the production of steroid hormones, and detoxification. The smooth endoplasmic reticulum is especially abundant in mammalian liver and gonad cells. That is very cool. So are you saying that the endoplasmic reticulation is better than striation? But here it said it did not have rhizomes. So I'm not sure what's going on. Ivan is Ivan the Heathen. Cory Booker speaking E-Spanish was absolutely terrifying. Yeah, didn't necessarily watch that part, but let's say before he ever even starts talking, I think my main center of attention, my main thought when you say the words Cory and Booker together in a sentence, I'm not really thinking about him talking or saying things. I actually think he's okay at talking and saying things, but there's something that happens before that comes to mind. Michelle Obama dancing. Yeah, Michelle Obama, maybe in 40 years, in the same way that like 40 years after FDR, like we know FDR was a paraplegic. We know that he had an affair. We know that his wife was really weird. We know all these things about FDR. We didn't know at the time. We know that JFK was banging Marilyn Monroe, who was like a drugged up zombie. We know all these things after the fact. Who knows? I don't know. I don't think I can say. I don't think I can speculate on Obama, but who knows in 40 years what we will know about Obama. I will allow my children to watch the show. No, that's not allowed because this is not a children's broadcast according to the rules, the laws. You are not allowed to show your children. You're actually, I think the rule and the law is you have to monitor your children. So actually, it's like a rated R movie. You can take a 6-year-old into a rated R movie as long as they have parental supervision. So yeah, I think you actually can have your kids watch the show. You just have to supervise them. I'm not, don't quote me on that. I'm not a lawyer. Don't ban me, please. Please have mercy. Not airing on the YouTube Kids app. Yeah, exactly. Prospective neophytes of our occult cabal will be subject to trial by garlic. Yeah. Basically, your rank in the occult school will be determined by how many cloves of garlic you can ingest in one sitting. It will be called the, what is this? Shikakwa? What does that mean, the Shikakwa? What is Shikakwa? Is that Chicago means striped skunk or smelly onion? Wow. I just learned something there. The Chicago tribe. Yeah, I'm part of the Chicago tribe. Here we go. Some bros saying hello to each other. Give us your food tip of the day. Health Freaks Rise. Yeah, we've got ginger. We've got apple cider vinegar. We have beets, which promote methylation, which I don't really understand what methylation is, but I heard somehow good for some protein synthesis, whatever. Carrot salad for detox. Yeah, I used to eat a lot of raw carrots. They're just very tasty. Vitamin A overdose. Yeah, I think it is possible to overdose on vitamin A. Also, possibly vitamin E, but I'm not so sure about that. Boomers aren't bad people, but they blame younger generations for messing everything up. Yeah, it's like we're the younger generations. Do you have no concept of generational causality? Like, younger generations are messed up. Did they mess themselves up? So this idea of the individual autonomy of a generation to create itself is just, it's an anarchist ontology, which is just very infuriating. So I understand why young people hate boomers, but of course we do not promote generalized hatred of any group on this channel. Swing and a miss. Boomers are the best. Aristocrats got usurped by the bourgeoisie as technological advancements move power away from superiority by birth and into the purse alone. Sounds logical. Can't read that. Who is the most handsome philosopher of all time? Hard question. That's a hard question. I have a soft spot in my heart for the grumpy old Schopenhauer. You know, you look, he's got this perfect, like, phlegmatic quality to him. We got to stop. We're going to stop the stream temporarily, but I'll be right back.